So we need a new kind of think tank, because the regular think tanks are ideological or national or sectoral in some sense. They're not looking at the whole game. You know? Where would you go to get a picture of the whole game? They say, well, what about the World Bank's annual report? That's economics. You know, World Health Organization is health. You say, well, doesn't the CIA do the global? Yeah, but that's on behalf of the United States. That assessment might be different than the one in Tehran. So what happens if you put Tehran and the United States and Israel and China and other places around the world, and they collaborate together? What emerges from that? That's what the Millennium Project is supposed to be. So it's a new kind of a think tank. And it is global in the sense that it's, global in the sense we have these nodes around the world. By node, I mean an intersection of two or more networks, right? Quick thing on the future of management. You have the conventional hierarchic pyramid. Everybody knows that, right? How do you defeat that? A network. A network cuts across a hierarchical control of up and down. Trouble with the network is it's like-minded. You are a network of very like-minded people. That's wonderful. But here's the next step. Intersect yourself with other systems. If you intersect two or more networks, you have what I call a node. Then take those nodes, we have 33 nodes around the world. That's the part there about the graphic part. Then if you interlink 2 or 3 or 4 nodes into a field of play, and then you link up fields of play, the Harvard Management School has lost track. And that's why we're more efficient than the IMMERSE think tank, because that's how we work. So geographically it's global, institutionally against these institutional categories of UN, governments, corporations, universities, NGOs, so forth. And disciplinarily, we don't care if you're an artist or a physicist. You're part of the human species. How do we get the collective intelligence going along? And our research focus, again, is global. So if we look at the future of education, we look at it through a whole bunch of different eyes that's not usually included in education. Next, by UN organizations, governments, NGOs, corporations, and universities. And that becomes a trans institution. Because the people who do the work come from all these categories, the money comes from these categories, the output goes through those categories, and the governing council, governing body, or planning committee has all these categories as well, but not a majority of any one. So we're able to act through those systems and be acted on by those systems, but self-selected. Next. Okay, so the purpose is, next, to create a global and ongoing capacity to improve thinking about the future. Global and ongoing. The history of futures research has been a series of bell curves. You know, big fanfare, Club of Rome, yay, big report, yay, next, boom, inner futures, yay, next. It's a whole bunch of bell curves. Where's the accumulative learning? We could say that we know more about chemistry today than 20 years ago. I'm not always clear that we can say we know more about futures research today than 20 years ago. Right? And it's very important for us. After all, that's the whole purpose of making a decision. The purpose of policy is to change the future. From what to what? Anyway, so that's part of the idea. Make that thinking available through a variety of media. We have not done that well. Now, I'm happy to say we brought to you the Second Life here. That's a Millennium Project activity. Right? So you can play in our Second Life, or we'll play in your Second Life or First Life. But in any case, we want to extend that media. We're not doing that very well. So what do we do it for? Policy making, advanced training, education curricula, public education, and continually respond to feedback to accumulate wisdom about the future. Next. Okay, so this all becomes a collective intelligence. This is the next chapter in our hope in our Evolution of the Millennium Project. The annual State of the Futures reports we've done for 13 years. They've had nice impact. We can point to that sort of stuff. It's good, and I hope you read it and like it and all that sort of stuff and give us feedback to improve them. But we want to take it the next step. The next step, we think, will be collective intelligence. And I mean this in a very precise way. I go to Google in a couple of days. We're going to work out, hopefully, some relations on this. But when I say collective intelligence, I don't mean predictive markets. This is where you take a bunch of people, make predictions, and they average that together and say, aha, good forecast. They call it collective intelligence. There's a conference coming up very soon about that. That's a slice in time. All right? Collective intelligence, the way I'm using it, is an emergent property. When you begin to do it, it's not there yet. In a similar sense, a consciousness is an emergent property from a variety of synergies. It's an emergent, and it keeps changing as the song and the music out of your brain was showing. It's a continuous emergent property. It's not a one-shot deal. And the reason I push this is I believe that collective intelligence will become a big buzzword and one of the next big things in the computer world. And I'm afraid it may go off into trivia. So I'm desperate in my voice, if you pick that up. That's one of the reasons I'm going to be the flavor of the month over in Google in a couple of days on this sort of stuff. Okay, so it's emergent property, like in chaos theory, emergent property. It's an emergent property from the synergies, remember the wheel and the box business, the synergies among the three things: data, information, knowledge, hardware, software, and experts. By experts, I don't necessarily mean the PhDs. It means that someone can be not a PhD, but they happen to have a new insight. No one else has. They're an expert on that, all right? And that continually learns from feedback. We all know that studying the brain, if you don't respond to feedback, you get dumber. Habituation is information coming in, no response out. And that's one of the reasons one-way media is dying. You know, it's the interactive media that causes the feedback loop. That produces nearly just-in-time knowledge for better decisions than those elements acting alone. We have signing an agreement, hopefully in a couple of days, in Korea to create a collective intelligence to support, believe it or not, we think, the first global climate change situation room. Now, this is amazing. You know, we've all been hearing about climate change. And as I mentioned, we wrote about it in '73. But there's not a place, a dome, a situation room, to see it all together. You say, well, isn't there the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change? Yes, there is, but they're spread out all around the world. There's not a situation room. Does the Secretary General have a situation room in his office? No, it looks like a lawyer's office. You know, here's a guy the most difficult management job in the world, and he's dealing with third-string management tools. So we don't have this. So if all goes well, we'll do their first one in Korea. It just so happens Secretary General's Korean, and it so happens that the head of information technology in New York is Korean, and so maybe work it out here in Korea first, and it's a gift from Korea to the Korean Secretary General. We'll see. So you may have heard it here first if that all happens. Okay. So we have these little nodes, I shouldn't say they're little, all around the world. Back up just a second. Thank you. Now you'll notice one of them is hanging out here in the middle. If all goes well, there'll be another one called the Arts, Entertainment, Media node. These are geographic nodes. Their job is to pick the brains. This is a chart for brain picking of the human species. So the idea is that they are, each of these are like a trans institution themselves. So if we say, who knows the most about education, then they say in the university world, in the government world, in the corporate world, in the UN world, and so forth. But they're drawing it from their areas. So they are geographically fixed except for cyberspace. The one we have in the United States, you'll notice, is Silicon Valley. I'm in Washington, D.C., coordinating, but the main one is Silicon Valley. Why Silicon Valley in the United States? Because in the world play, the United States has a few problems, but not the image of Silicon Valley. I don't care who you are in the world, you still want to have the best chip, the best software. And for better or for worse, Silicon Valley is the best PR piece the United States has in the world. That's why it's there. No one argues against that. Right? Now, we may have others in the United States, and that's fine, but my hope for you and this activity is that you become like the cyberspace node, because its job is to keep track of all of the new stuff around the world in cyberspace. And it was Frank, by the way, who was the chair of this, that brought you Second Life. So his job is to serve you as he's doing tonight. So, and by the way, all of these nodes also serve the other nodes. Each node is the headquarters for something. It's a leader-full system. Anyway, so ideally, the arts media node then can draw on all these nodes to help find the best artists, creative people they can in their country and support you in the evolution. Next. And then these are the sponsors. Oh, sorry, no, these are not sponsors. These are the agreements. This goes back to that idea of a trans institution. We write an agreement with some entity, a memorandum of understanding. But you'll notice sometimes it's governments, sometimes it's private companies, sometimes it's universities, sometimes it's NGOs. We don't care, as long as we have a mix all the time. So it can be with a nonprofit organization, it can be with the US government, it doesn't care, it has to be a responsible organization, but they have to pull in from the different players. This is not a political party activity. We have nodes, you'll notice, in Tehran and Tel Aviv. Okay, next. Secretary General thinks it's a nice idea. Deloitte & Touche thinks it's a nice idea. And Kuwait thinks we're the best idea.